Great.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. As you know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went to visit the Governor General on Sunday, and we now have a federal election. And so we're going to be trying to introduce you to a couple of interesting candidates over the course of the next few weeks. We're also invited some leaders of the different political parties and some ministers and critics. But I want to introduce you to someone who, a buddy of mine who I think very highly of, has told me is one of the most impressive candidates he has ever met. And so Leah Taylor Roy, passionate community leader, running for Parliament in the riding of Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. Lee's a mother of six. She's got deep roots in Aurora. She wants to run the election. She wants to run in this election because she wants to ensure that everyone in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill has a strong voice, and she thinks that they currently don't have a strong voice. She's got an unbelievably impressive resume. She's a graduate of the University of Toronto with a degree of commerce. She then attended Harvard University, where she received a master's in public policy with a focus on international finance and development. She then went to work for the World Bank, then for McKinsey and Company. Then she was executive vice president for a US-based cogeneration company. And then there's lots more that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. So pretty impressive. She also has been very involved in a local choir, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that. So, Lee, welcome to our show. How are you?
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm fine, thank you. Had a great day canvassing and being out on the streets.
So tell me, what do you think? Is it the right time for an election? The election law says that the elections are supposed to come every 4 years. Why did your leader pull the plug and go to the polls now?
Well, I wasn't part of the decision, Brian, but my feeling is that when we went to the polls in 2019, the issues were very, very different than they are today. And I agree with our Prime Minister that we needed to go back and make sure that our country agreed with the direction we're taking. I mean, as you know, unprecedented is an overused term, but these have been unprecedented times. And I think a lot of things have changed. And there's a lot of different viewpoints on how we should be proceeding, not only with COVID, but in general with the economy. And I think right now we need to have a strong mandate from the Canadian people that says, this is the direction we want to go. We agree with the Liberals, and let's move forward quickly. And I think quickly is what we need to do. Tell
me, you've got such an impressive background. You know, U of T Commerce, Harvard University Public Policy, World Bank, McKinsey and Company. Why would you want to go into politics where you're going to be going to rubber chicken dinners every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night? You're going to be traveling to Ottawa every Sunday night or Monday morning. You're going to be bickering in the House of Commons. Why?
Well, let me start with the last point, which is I'm really hoping not to be bickering a lot. I think we have to work together much more effectively as a parliament and not have the kind of bickering that we've been seeing. I think that divisiveness and what's been happening over the last few months in parliament is one of the reasons we need to go to the people and just say, you know, which direction do you want to go? But beyond that, you know, I was raised in a family where public service and giving back to your community were the most important things. You know, my father was mayor in Newmarket for many years, but before that, he founded so many organizations, and my entire family really revolved around public service, and not politics per se, but, you know, community, making sure that we serve the community in different ways. And it's always been something that I've aspired to in different ways throughout my life. And at this point, my youngest daughter is 20. I felt that there was a real need in 2019. And I feel it even more today with this election, quite frankly, that it's even more important. But that we need people who are there because they want to represent their communities, their ridings, and that they're there to serve the people and to make sure that Canada is moving forward in a positive way as quickly as we can, because there's many issues right now that need attending to, Brian, very quickly, I believe.
We're chatting tonight with Leah Taylor Roy. She's the federal Liberal candidate for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more and understand a little bit about what some of the issues are, how she feels about Justin Trudeau, about Aaron O'Toole, about the pandemic, what her policies are, and something about the riding and why and how she thinks she can win. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're canvassing some different candidates in the federal election, and tonight we're profiling Leah Taylor Roy. She's the federal Liberal candidate in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. She's got a really unbelievably impressive background. She's got an undergraduate commerce degree from U of T. She's got a master's in public policy from Harvard University. She worked with the World Bank. She's worked with McKinsey. She's worked with some not-for-profits and some cogeneration companies, really, and a lot of different charitable activities. So, what an impressive background. It's a pleasure and an honor meeting someone with this incredible background that wants to serve the people. And so good luck, Lee. So tell me a little bit about the riding. Who's the current member of parliament?
Our current member of parliament is Leona Alislev. She's a conservative, but was elected by the people in our riding as a Liberal in 2015. She crossed the floor and became a conservative. And I think really a lot of people in our riding felt betrayed because she was a first-time candidate, new to the Liberal Party here, and a lot of people put a lot of hard work into helping her. She's currently there as a conservative.
And how are you going to beat her?
I'm going to beat her by working really hard, Brian. I just believe that people can sense when you are sincere, when you're really there for the right reasons and you care. And like I said before, community is incredibly important to me. And I think that reaching out to every part of our community, we have a very large, diverse riding, really interesting. And I am working hard to make sure that I get into every corner of it and have worked over the last year and a half virtually, as you know, through Zoom and other phone calls, et cetera, to be sure that I've been listening to people here, to understand what the needs are. And I think a lot of people want change. We in our riding, we are a progressive riding. We are definitely a progressive riding, more NDPs, Greens, and Liberals than Conservatives. And I think people feel that they want to have someone that's listening to them and really concerned about being their representative in Ottawa. And that's what I'm running on. And just letting people know that I'm listening, I care, and I really want to work hard for them.
With a person that's crossed the floor, does the Conservative Party support her? Does she get donations? Does she get workers? Is that a opportunity for you?
It's really hard for me to know, Brian. I'm not inside her campaign. But I do know that, I think it's been challenging. It's hard when you start with one party and you cross to another one. I know people I've met in the community, many of them were just very disappointed with that and upset. And I think that, whatever support she's getting, I know I'm getting a lot of support from our party. The Liberal Party has been fantastic to work with. I've been encouraged, and we have a tremendous number of volunteers. And I think that's what's more important, quite frankly, is that the support you're getting from your community, not from the party necessarily, because this is about representing the community. And of course, you're part of a party. You choose a party to that you believe in, and hopefully you stick with them. But I really think it's about having the community support and the volunteers around here, and that's what I have.
So, I've just checked the voting history. 2 elections ago, the Conservatives got 50% of the vote. Actually, was 51.5%. The Liberals were way down at 27%. And as we know, that was an election that Stephen Harper won a majority government in. And then Trudeau came along, and the Liberals won with 47%, but the Conservatives, while they went down to 45%. And so the Liberals have gone from 27 to 47, 20-point increase during that time period. But then, 3 years later or 4 years later, when in the last election, and it was Trudeau against Andrew Scheer, the Liberal vote went down to 42%. And the Conservative vote held firm, down a point from 45 to 44. So from an outsider, what an outsider would say is, in a once in a lifetime huge sweep by Trudeau, the Liberals could squeak out a victory. But this is really a conservative riding. It's a strong conservative riding with 51% 3 elections ago, 45 and 44. How do you answer that?
Well, we had 42% last time, Brian. And if you look at the combined Liberal, NDP, and Green vote, we had more than the Conservatives did. I think this really is a progressive riding, and it's also a riding that has been changing rapidly and growing. You know, we've had a lot of growth here, a lot of new Canadians, a lot of younger people, and I think you're seeing changes. But before 2015, this was a different riding. This was created in 2015. So the stats don't exactly compare, although I know they try and do that. But I feel very confident from talking to people that the Liberals, we do have more of a Liberal riding here, and that we will win this time.
If you take a look at the 2011 election results, it's almost as if it's not the Conservatives that beat the Liberals, it's the NDP. And it was that Jack Layton orange wave, and the NDP vote went up significantly by 10 points. And that's what happened in a lot of suburban ridings around Toronto in that election. It wasn't the Conservatives that beat. The Conservatives stayed sort of where they were, but the NDP vote went up, took it away from Michael Ignatieff and the Liberals in that election. And the splits created the opportunity for the Conservatives to win. So was your competition in this election the Conservative, or do you have to keep that NDP vote down?
You know, I really think that we just have to get our positive message out and get all the voters, Brian. I think we can, both Conservatives and NDP will see the amazing job that our government has done during this pandemic. It was a really tough time, as everyone knows. And if you look at where we are now, we're number one in the G7 and the G20 in terms of vaccines and arms. I mean, that's pretty amazing for Canada. We've supported everyone. We've had the backs of people. And I've been talking to both Conservatives and NDP that are voting Liberal this time, because they feel that the government has done a good job, that we need to keep moving forward. We have a government with experience, with a solid plan. And this is what we need right now. So really, I've spoken to both. And yes, as a party, we need to make sure we reach out and let people know on both sides. But certainly progressives, NDPs, realize that if they want a progressive member here, the Liberals are the choice, and that we are a progressive party that are doing many of the things that the NDP is talking about. We're already working on them. So I think, as I said, that we appeal to both party voters that voted either for the Conservatives or the NDP last time. And I think we're going to gain on both sides.
You said your father was the mayor of Newmarket?
He was indeed. Yes, he was the mayor.
So you have quite a long history in family history in politics.
Yeah, we do. And in fact, my first appearance in any political material was in 1967 when I was a child, and I was on a matchbook cover. You remember when we used to do that? Like the Matchbox covers, right? With my family. And that was when he was running for a Liberal, actually, the provincial Liberals, which at that time in that part of Ontario, there was no chance. It was one of those, you did it because you believed in Liberal principles. Yeah, he's run for the Liberals. He was mayor for a number of years. I think he was in politics for 42 years. Not politics, I don't like to say. I'd like to say representing the community in different aspects, in different ways, for 42 years before he retired. And he's still active in my campaign, Brian. My dad is still going strong and one of my key supporters.
Oh, I'd love to meet him sometime. So in 1967, he would have run on a ticket with my second cousin, who was leader of the Liberal Party at the time, a gentleman by the name of Bob Nixon. He was leader of the Liberal Party in 1967. Oh,
that was your cousin, that second cousin. That's amazing. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And they went down to defeat, regrettably.
I know.
But that was, I think, Bob's first election campaign after, regrettably, the surprise death of his father, who was leader of the Liberal Party for quite a long period of time, since he was Premier of Ontario in 1943. And Bill Davis, who regrettably just passed away, was the victor in that election. So interesting stories. So with that family history, has politics always been in your blood?
I would say yes. And like I said, more than politics, Brian, really public service, community, being part of a community and helping your community. I think, not just the family history, it's the values. My family was all over about helping other people, and it was the highest calling, quite frankly. It was funny that I went and did a business degree at U of T, because really we were much more focused on helping others. My mother was a nurse, and in fact, my mother and father met up in Moose Factory when my mother was a nurse at a Indigenous hospital there, and my father was actually flying work up there as well. Yeah, so way back, and my mother's always been very involved in community as well, and in many, many different things. Heart and stroke was one of her big ones, but so many. Habitat for Humanity.
My father founded. Then you went to Harvard for a Master of Public Policy. Was that at the Kennedy School of Government?
It was. Yes.
That must have been an incredible experience. What did you think of Cambridge and Boston and the Kennedy School?
I loved it all. It was an incredible experience, a real opportunity. And I was really lucky to be able to go there, Brian. I worked hard. I worked 3 part-time jobs when I was there to cover my costs. I had scholarships to go, but it was very expensive at the time. I come from a middle-class family. I had to work hard and save money. I took a year off before I went. Worked at William and Mercer in Toronto in finance and actuarial science, and then was lucky enough to be there. And I really took advantage of it. I was able, because of our excellent university system in Canada, to exempt out of a lot of the core courses I would have had to take. And I put together a program between the business school, MIT Business School, the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and the Kennedy School. That really focused on the areas I was interested in international finance and development. So it was fascinating. And the students I got to work with, the professors, just the whole environment. It's such a, university town, well, if you can call it a town.
Yeah, I spent some time at Harvard as well.
I know, you were there at the same time, weren't you?
Just after, I think. And I found that, one of the most special things was the people that would come and speak at either the Kennedy School or at the university or at the business school, because anyone that wanted to have a podium at a university wanted to have a podium at Harvard, and the people that I got to meet and the people I got to hear from were unparalleled in my whole life.
Yeah, no, really is incredible. A great meeting spot, a meeting place for so many people. Yeah, the Institute of Politics there at the Kennedy School brought in a lot of great speakers. And we actually stayed involved a little bit afterwards. I've stayed involved a little bit afterwards as well, but just, it was an incredible experience, really.
And then you went to the World Bank. Tell us about the World Bank. What did you do there?
Yeah, the first work I did there was in looking at the effectiveness of different government or World Bank programs and actually making change in these countries. And I focused on Africa at the time. And it was, again, fascinating. Again, a very international, workforce. My direct report, Jeff Lamb, was from South Africa. It was really a great experience, again, in just observing how a large international institution functions and how things can get done in a lot of ways. I really enjoyed it. And then later I got to work in Treasury. And I worked on analyzing kind of the World Bank's borrowing requirements and how much float they should keep, and raising money versus dispersing money to countries. So it was really, really both areas were fascinating, and I enjoyed it. But I really wanted to come back to Canada.
And was that in Washington?
Yes, in Washington D.C. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you came back to Canada, and then what did you do? You worked for McKinsey?
I did. I joined McKinsey and Company,
which is a top consulting company, global.
Yeah.
And what kind of work did you do with McKinsey?
Well, most of my work was around finance, but in all sorts of sectors across our economy. So I was really lucky to be able to travel the country and work in different sectors, from gold mining to oil and gas, pulp and paper, manufacturing, even publishing, and working on mergers or refinancings or spinoffs and different things like that. But really, a good education in the Canadian economy and meeting people from across the country. And it was fascinating. But like a lot of people, my career then, I ended up going to the States for a while as well. But it was great. It was wonderful, and a real education.
And then you got involved in something in cogeneration?
Mhm.
Tell us about
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, it was actually more entrepreneurial. It was my husband. I met my husband and his family were starting to work in the cogeneration field. So that at the time was considered green energy or more green. It was very energy, efficient. It used the waste thermal energy in industrial processes usually. So very little waste. And so we developed, developed and financed large scale cogeneration facilities. And again, a very different part of the business world, seeing how, you took a concept and you brought it to fruition, and just going through again, firsthand, the financing and the regulatory process and working with partners and communities. So it was a great experience as well.
What an unbelievable background. And you've also been involved in a bunch of charitable activity, I understand.
Yeah. No, I was one of the ones that I spent a lot of time with was something called Gems of Hope, which was actually begun here by Doreen and Ben Wicks in Canada. And when I was at McKinsey, I did pro bono work from them. But I really loved the concept of trying to help people help themselves. And so I founded a chapter of it basically, and we would raise money and work with partners in different parts of the world to fund microcredit. And we would go out and meet with women in communities and help build these small banks, kind of like the Grameen Bank, but at a different scale.
Right.
And so, yeah, did a lot of work in South America, Central America, and the States, and at home, and then across in Eastern Europe as well. And helped people start small businesses.
Well, given this resume, one would think you're a star candidate. You should be the contending for the next Minister of Finance portfolio. So congratulations and on your incredible career, and good luck. We're going to take a break. We're chatting tonight with Leah Taylor Roy. She's the federal Liberal candidate for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back after the messages and ask her some tough questions about the current policies, the current issues in the campaign. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're profiling tonight for you Leah Taylor Roy. She's the federal Liberal candidate for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. She's got an unbelievably impressive background. Frankly, I'm not sure why she's running for politics, but it's fantastic that people that have got this much experience actually put their name forward and want to run for politics, because personally, I think we have way too many career politicians that don't have the incredible wide experience that Lee's got. And so I think that we need more people like you in Parliament. And so good luck. I hope you win.
Thank you, Brian.
But let me try to put you on the spot here and ask you a couple of questions. So, we're in a fourth wave. The pandemic we thought was behind us. We thought the vaccine rates were great. That's not the right time to call an election, is it? In the middle of a fourth wave? Why didn't we just wait out the pandemic before we had to do this?
Well, I think we really needed to get a clear mandate, Brian. And I think you've followed politics and understand how it works with minority governments. Things were getting toxic and things were slowing down. Some important legislation didn't get passed, including the bill to ban conversion therapy, quite frankly. But more importantly, it's really the focus on COVID right now. And our government has come out very strongly in favor of vaccine passports, in favor of requiring federal employees and people that are traveling by air or train to have vaccines. And the Conservatives have come out against that. We see in Ontario, the Conservative government and what they've been doing. And I think, we need to go back. No one in 2019, when we had the election, could have anticipated what we're facing now or these issues. We can't.
So do you think that a vaccine passport, something that the federal government organizes, like a driver's license or an actual citizen passport, proving whether you've got the two vaccines, is something that the federal government should put in place, and that passport is something that different businesses, different travel organizations, et cetera, can demand to see before people get granted entry?
You know what? I do think a vaccine passport is a good idea, Brian. This is a public health issue, and we've seen how effective vaccines are. We're talking about everyone's safety. And I think it's in the public good, quite frankly. I think we have to say we want to protect all Canadians. And we've seen with this new, if you will, the fourth wave, that it's affecting people who aren't vaccinated. The unvaccinated are the ones that are getting sick, but we do have other people who are vulnerable. And should be able to know whether the people they're with or coming into a restaurant have been vaccinated or not. And I think business owners want it too. Many business owners want to know that people have been vaccinated.
So are we going to create two classes of citizen, and we're going to have one restaurant for the vaccinated and another restaurant for the unvaccinated, and one concert for the vaccinated and another concert or another church or another political party for the unvaccinated? Are we going to have two classes of citizens in Canada with a vaccine passport?
Well, I really hope not. I hope that all Canadians get the vaccines. We've got plenty of them here. They're readily available, and we know that they work, they're effective, and they're safe. I think our message has to be get vaccines. And when people cannot get vaccines for medical reasons, Brian, then I think we have to have allowances. But I think these passports, these vaccine passports, are going to give us more freedom. And I think that's what people want. And when it comes to traveling, for example, we'll be able to, people around the world will know who's been vaccinated or not. I just think, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We need to know that we're safe. And I think we need leadership on this issue.
I agree with you, but some people don't. There's a minority of people that don't believe COVID is real, don't believe that masks are real and help, and don't believe that vaccines help. In fact, some people think that vaccines are implanting some sort of technology that's going to track us, or whatever the current conspiracy theory is about vaccines. And for whatever the reason is, they are adamant in their beliefs and believe that our system of freedoms provides them the right that they don't have to put something into their arm that they don't believe in. Don't you think you're infringing on people's rights?
No, I don't think so. I think that if people do not want to take the vaccine, that's up to them. But I think it is the job of our government to protect us and to see us through this pandemic. And I think they've done an incredibly good job. And I think vaccine passports are part of that. I think that if people choose not to have them, I would appeal to them and say, please look at the science, look at the facts, and don't look at disinformation and misinformation. Really just study what's happening over the last while. Just look at the cases and see who's been getting sick. It's science and it's facts, Brian, in my mind. And people have the right to their own point of view, but they don't have the right to endanger others, in my mind. And we have things like seatbelt laws. We are a society and a country which has a public health system. We all pay for that. We share that, and we have an agreement amongst us. So why, when we have the science, we have the facts, we have the data, and we have a government that's done a great job of protecting us, if people choose not to avail themselves of that, it is their choice, but then there are consequences. And I don't think it's two classes of citizens, quite frankly. I think it's just your choice, but like many things in life, there are consequences to your choice.
Okay, good answer. You've got a substantial financial background, World Bank, Treasury issues, et cetera. We have the largest deficits and largest debts in history. Mm-hmm. And I was frankly surprised that the Conservatives came out with a very expensive program in their economic relief, and I think they said 10 years before they start paying down the debt. Don't we need some fiscal conservatism? Didn't Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin fight like crazy to kill the what some people thought was Canada's peso crisis and bring our budget back into not only balance but surplus for a while? Aren't we risking all that? Don't you think, as the financial person that you are, that we are standing on the precipice of a financial collapse and tragedy?
I don't think we are, Brian. I'm actually quite bullish on Canada, to quote Chrystia Freeland. And I think that we will come out of this stronger. We came in actually a very good fiscal position. As you probably know, our GDP to debt ratios were among the best in the G7. And I think that right now, what we do have to pay attention to is what we invest money in. But we need to continue to invest. That's the way we grow. When we look at things like childcare, for example, which I think is an incredibly important policy that the Liberals have on the table, and I think is really going to make a big difference in terms of our balance sheet. we are going to be investing. It's social infrastructure, but the returns we're going to get from that are going to help us to pay down this debt. I think, it's like anything.
How does social infrastructure investment help you pay down the debt?
Well, because we actually will end up with a higher productivity, with more parents being able to be in the workforce and knowing that their children are well taken care of and are receiving education. We're going to have kids that are better educated from an earlier age. So they're going to be more productive down the line. And we're going to see that increased productivity, that increased participation in the workforce, resulting in higher tax base, higher taxes, as well as having, as I say, even further down the line, a better educated workforce that will help position us in terms of global competitiveness. So I think governments have to, we're not a business. Some of the decisions we have to look at business concepts, but business is very focused on the short term and just shareholder value now. Governments are there to look after all stakeholders, not just the shareholders. And I think we need to look at this and say, we're making long-term decisions, long-term investments that will cost us now, but that are going to help our country grow, be competitive, and prosper in the long run.
And if you're wrong and the Canadian dollar collapses and interest rates go up, comparable to what happened in the 1990s when we had the Canadian peso crisis and we had to dramatically attack our deficit and get it down, what would you do?
Well, you know what? I'd have to wait. I don't deal in hypotheticals, Brian. I don't think that's going to happen, quite frankly. I think we are on a good path. I think we do have to keep our eye on things like inflation. But I don't believe that the current debt, look, as everyone knows, I can use unprecedented again. It was an unprecedented time. And I think our government knew somebody was going to go into debt, and they went in debt for Canadians that couldn't afford to in terms of their households. So we are taking care of people. This is something that's global. And so I think, this is a one-time occurrence, and we're going to work now to rebuild the economy, to transition to a green economy, and also to be sure that we can get people back into the workplace and increase our productivity and do what we need to do to make sure that down the road, our debt to GDP ratio drops again. And we're still actually in pretty good shape when you look at the comparisons that we make.
You went to school, you said, in the United States for international development. You were fascinated by that. You went to the World Bank and you were interested in international development. And that this past week, we saw people clinging to the side of jets on the international airport at Kabul, as after 20 years of trying, NATO, the Americans, Canada included, effectively admitted defeat, and that we couldn't go in to a foreign country and create a new, more free, more democratic government. Is the opportunity for us to have positive impact internationally dead?
No, I don't believe that at all, Brian. I think we have to continue, and I think our government is continuing to have a positive impact internationally. I think what's happened in Afghanistan is a tragedy. There was a real opportunity, especially for women and girls there for 20 years. But I don't see that as saying, that situation right now we're continuing to work on. Canada has, committed itself to bringing 20,000 Afghan refugees here, and that's the beginning. I think we are doing our part, and I think helping in this situation is part of our global responsibility. I don't think our influence is dead. And I think, in fact, that, we need to continue to work with our allies in these multilateral organizations to help ensure that everyone on the globe is moving forward. Like with things like the pandemic and global warming, we can't go back to the era of, just caring about our country only. Of course, it's our top priority. And we're most concerned about the safety and well-being of Canadians, but we're not an island. And, this whole world shares one planet. We're all connected. And if we're not working together going forward, we're going to be in real trouble.
Climate change. Is it real?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Man-made?
Contributed for sure. Yeah. I think our
carbon taxes the solution?
a price on pollution is part of it. It's one of the best market-based ways of reducing greenhouse gases. I mean, we were talking earlier about
Explain to us what market-based ways of reducing pollution means.
Sure, it's giving incentives to change people's behavior. So, it's basically putting that price on pollution. I mean, when we look at things and people look around us and say, oh, this is a cheaper option. I'm going to, I'm going to keep my gasoline, engine instead of going to an electric vehicle because it's cheaper. The infrastructure or the batteries or whatever in electric vehicles are more expensive. But if we don't have the price to our planet and to Canada reflected in the cost of the gasoline, then people aren't really making a market-based choice. And it's happening over and over again with so many things that we're not incorporating the complete cost of that transaction to our planet, to our society, when we don't incorporate what it's costing in terms of greenhouse gases, pollution, global warming, all of that. And we've got to move more in that direction. And I think the price on pollution has been shown by, as you probably know, the IMF and many, many international institutions to be one of the best ways to reduce greenhouse gases and allow consumers to make that choice, but giving them the real choice. This is the true cost.
We're talking to Leah Taylor Roy, a candidate for the federal Liberal Party in the upcoming federal election. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us.
Thanks.
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio on Saga 60. I'm having a fun chat tonight with Leah Taylor Roy. She's the federal Liberal candidate in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, which is sort of north of Toronto, and I guess in the 905 in the suburbs of Toronto. And a lot of people say that winning the 905 is the key to an election. In the last election, the Liberals took most of the 905, but not all. And I guess you're one of the ones that didn't go Liberal. And if the Liberals want to regain a majority, I think they need 15 seats to grow. And so I presume your riding is one of the ridings that the Liberals have to win if they want to regain a majority that they lost 2 years ago. And clearly, if the Conservatives want to win, they've got to win most of the 905, which is what Stephen Harper did in 2011 when he ran against Michael Ignatieff and the Liberal Party at that time. So your riding is probably going to be a important bellwether as to whether it's a Liberal majority or a minority, or whether the Conservatives are resurgent. We haven't talked much about social justice issues, and this past June, May, June, July, the tragedy of what had happened, decades ago in residential schools, because we found all these unmarked graves, became something we became aware of. Tell me how you felt about that, and tell me what you think you and the Liberal government are doing and should do about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, no, it was a huge, it has been an ongoing tragedy. And I think that the discovery of those graves really put a spotlight on what has been happening. Of course, the reports done on missing Indigenous women and girls, and also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission have highlighted a lot of that. But and this government, I have to say, has made this a priority. I know COVID over the last couple of years has really taken a lot of the focus, but our government has continued to work. There's a misconception, I think, to do with the boiled water advisories, for example. We have lifted 109 of those advisories. There are 32 communities left with boiled water advisories, but they're a work in process. They're ongoing, and we are working closely in consultation with these communities to make sure that the systems that are put in, the training that's in place, everything is done with them. The money is there, the will is there, and we are moving forward on it. So we are working hard on those things. Likewise, working with First Nations to ensure that they have now control over their child welfare systems, so that they are able to decide what happens with the children that perhaps have to leave their home in their communities. And many of them because of the trauma that was, from the residential schools. So we're trying to get not only to solve the problem we have right now, but to solve the root cause of it. and to make sure that the First Nations in Canada, our Métis and our Inuit, all of our Indigenous peoples, that they have a real say in as they should, as they had, in what is happening in their communities. And that takes time. But this government is very committed to it and has done more since 2015 than all governments before that have done, quite frankly. So we are working hard. And I know that Mark Miller and Carolyn Bennett and others are continuing to have conversations, to work in conjunction with the leaders in these nations to ensure that it's done properly.
Leah Taylor Roy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If people are impressed with you based on this conversation and they want to reach out to you and get a campaign sign or support you financially or just vote for you, is there a website that you should direct them to?
Absolutely. It's
supportleah.ca.
Oh yeah, supportleah.ca. Very, very, very straightforward. And I'd love your support.
Supportleah.ca. Well, I've got to tell you, I've met a lot of political people from all different political parties in my career and in my political time. And you've got one of, if not the most impressive backgrounds that I've ever seen. And you handle yourself with tough questions incredibly well. My only voice of concern would be, I think if your campaign manager is still listening, you got to tell her or him, depending on whether it was the female that I met or Howard Brown that was also there, how can I win if the Conservatives get 42 to 44%?
Mm-hmm.
And that, Howard will tell you, is something that I told someone else in 2011. And regrettably, we didn't have a strategy to win if the Conservatives were that strong.
Right.
And I think that's what you got to do, because I think that what's going to happen is the Conservatives are still going to be reasonably strong.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make sure that the NDP and the Green aren't, and those NDP and Green votes come to you, and that 2 to 3%, that's all you're going to get, I would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
2 to 3%, maybe 4 of the Conservative vote from the last time come to you, which is going to be the Red Tories. And so how can I get the Red Tories and keep the NDP and Green in low single digits?
Yeah.
That's the strategy that I think you need to do.
Absolutely. Thanks for your advice, Brian. Appreciate it.
Good luck. That's our show.
Really nice talking to you.
Thanks to Leah Taylor Roy for joining us. I come to you every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca, or you can get all my podcasts and even video casts on briancrombie.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Audible, Apple Podcasts, almost anywhere that videos and podcasts are available. Good night, everybody.